right, we live. What's going on? What's going on? Come on in, come on in. So, got a pretty good conversation we're going to talk about, touch on, one that I'm very much passionate about. So, let me go ahead and welcome everybody. My name is Edward Williams. I'm the founder and creator of Health by Any Means Necessary. If you haven't done so yet, please go ahead, subscribe to the channel, like it, and then share this video. Go ahead and start hitting the like button right now. That way we can push this video up in the algorithm and we can bring more people into the conversation. And tonight we're gonna have a discussion about fasting. And so I am extremely passionate about fasting. Fasting is my gospel. Fasting is king. Fasting is everything. I know most people tell me I don't look like somebody who fasts because of my build, but I'm fasting the majority of my life, the majority of my day, and I'll talk about that at the end of the video or later on in the video about how I fast and how the type of protocols that I recommend when it comes to fasting. But before we do all of that, let me kind of quickly tell you who I am. Once again, I'm Edward Williams. I'm the founder and creator of Health by Any Means Necessary. By day, I practice medicine. I'm a physician assistant over here in Florida. Also, I'm a nutritionist. I'm a personal trainer and weight loss specialist, all those things. But I say put all of that second on the priority list of who I am. Know that I am your brother first. Know that I have a strong invested interest in the community and that my goals is to link up with people who are like-minded, who see the same things that I see as far as our health conditions and radically improve it. And we're going to talk about what our ancestors have gone through previously in history and how they survived it. And now we seem to be in a situation as it pertains to our health where the foods are doing a thousand times better job as far as killing us at a faster pace than they were doing to us back in the days. So we need to talk about that. And, so I want to make sure we get this message out. That's why it's so important that we make sure we share this video, we subscribe to the channel, and we also like this video because it's our mission, it's our community, it's our job to actually get this message out. And we want to make sure that we continue to control our narrative because that is extremely important. Okay. So before I jump into it, I always like to read a quote. A quote real quick by one of my favorite quotes by Malcolm X. And that is, never let your enemy form your opinion. The first step the enemy takes in a revolution is to take over the media and tell the people that the war is over so that they all surrender. And that makes that's about right. That makes sense, right? So, everything that I'm going to say for a lot of people may sound foreign and strange. And I need for everybody to understand, or for a lot of my people to understand, or my colleagues to understand, that the only reason it sounds foreign and strange is because we've been thoroughly convinced. We've been thoroughly convinced that we're destined to be sick. We've been thoroughly convinced that these conditions, these diseases just run in our veins. We've been thoroughly convinced that we are helpless and that there's nothing we can do except depend on a system that was not designed to see us heal, but instead designed to see us fail. So we've been thoroughly convinced for so long that it's very hard to get people to realize and wake up to see what's going on. So if it sounds foreign and strange, I want you to always ask yourself, did it sound foreign and strange the other way when it was given to me by the people who historically have shown as pertains to this healthcare system that they don't really like me like that? So always question yourself when it comes to a lot of this information that I'm presenting, and a lot of other people out there that are presenting as well too. So my goal when I'm doing these videos is to, as pertains to the disease management system that they call healthcare system, that it's now a disease management system. My job is threefold. One is to let you know that it's a burning building. It's a burning building, and I'm not going to show my people how to stay cool inside of a burning building. My job is to, one, make sure everybody's aware that the building is burning. Make sure they understand that that sound you hear is a fire alarm. We need to get out. Two, show you how to get out safely and effectively. And then three, show you how to build your own, which would be self-care. So this is grown folks talk. If you are not willing to actually do the work that will be required to actually improve your health, if you're not willing to hold yourself accountable, then it's probably not a good idea that you watch this video or any of the other videos, because the things that you're going to hear, it's going to either make you respond or you're going to go through a mild level of psychosis, but because you're going to see what's really going on, and hopefully you still respond. But you know, make sure you understand that this is grown folks talk. All right, this is grown folks talk. I assume everybody here wants to take action or even spread the word to take action. All right, so the title of the video is How Fasting Will Save the Black Community. So let's think about, or let's look at the health conditions of our community. Let's look at the health conditions of our community. Right now, they are in shambles. Our disease rates, or our quote unquote disease rates, are incredibly high. Particularly when it comes to, particularly what I'm talking about is the preventable conditions. Preventable conditions are things that are actually brought on due to lifestyle. They are things that could have been prevented if certain steps were taken. So this would be things such as high blood pressure, heart disease, high cholesterol, strokes, kidney disease, obesity. So these are all preventable conditions. Now you have a small aspect of all of those things that are congenital. There are small, very small aspect of those things that are happening because of, you know, birth defects or something that's outside of it being caused by yourself. But the overwhelming majority of it all is preventable. It's something that we are bringing on ourselves, whether we know it or not. It's something that could actually be prevented if we actually took the proper steps. So let's look at our rates as it pertains to death. So what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at the cdc.gov. If you go to cdc.gov and you pull up top causes of death, and there's going to be a PDF. Take a look at that, and you're going to scroll all the way down. I'm not sure which page this is, but if you scroll all the way down, it's going to start breaking down the top 10 causes of death in America, but it's also going to do it by race. So you're going to see non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic black, Hispanic, and you're going to see, you know, other racial groups as well too. So let's look at the black group. So for us, our number one killer in our community is heart disease. So listen to these numbers. This is back in 2016. So back in 2016, heart disease, we ranked number one out of all races for heart disease as far as our death, and the number was 76,708. We're talking about 76,708 brothers and sisters who we lost due to heart disease. Okay. Next, when we look at something such as cerebrovascular incidents, we're looking pretty much stroke. When we're looking at strokes, 18,189 brothers and sisters died in 2016 from stroke. We rank number 3 as it pertains to deaths from stroke. Then we look at diabetes. 14,053 brothers and sisters died from diabetes in 2016, and we rank number 5 for deaths from diabetes. These are huge numbers. These are huge numbers. So let's keep on going. Now the next one is going to be on kidney.gov, I believe. I don't have the website in front of me anymore, but it's the official kidney disease website. So they say African Americans constitute more than 35 to 45% of all patients receiving United States dialysis kidney failure treatment, but only represent 13.2% of the overall U.S. population. So let me read that again. African Americans make up 35 to 45% of all patients in the U.S. receiving dialysis for kidney failure, while at the same time, you only represent 13.2% percentage of the U.S. populations. That's a huge gap. That's a huge gap. We're talking about a group of people, African Americans, who make up what they say 13.2%. But when it comes to the dialysis clinics, when it comes to the diabetes and the heart disease and the strokes, we're at the top. We're at the top. And in the dialysis clinics, we're the number one population in the dialysis clinics, which is a huge problem. Anybody who knows my work, you know that I have a very pet peeve when it comes to dialysis clinics, because I am seeing them rapidly increasing, specifically in our community, specifically in a lot of these plazas that have the Chinese food, the pawn shops, the alcohol, the chicken spots, right surrounded right around it. So it makes it very convenient for you to get sick and just go ahead and get your treatment, and then go ahead and get sick and then go ahead and get your treatment. So but also, once you understand the economics of a dialysis clinic, once you understand how low the overhead is, how low the actual salary you have to pay the techs, and then you understand how much each patient is worth per year to the healthcare system, which is at least $90,000. We're talking about a procedure or a treatment that a person will have to be relegated to 3 to 4 times a week, 3 to 4 hours for the rest of their lives. And that is a guaranteed $90,000 for the healthcare system at least. That's going to be going into the dialysis machine companies. And the dialysis machine is machine that's doing most of the work. So the reason why the overhead can be so low is because all you really need are a couple of techs, maybe one nurse, and just one doctor. And once again, that doctor doesn't have to be a real functional doctor. He can just be laying up in the corner like weekends at Uncle Bernie and just prop him up and just make sure that that license is current, and you got you a clinic. All right. So that's something I'll be addressing more and more and more as this year goes on. But what you should know is that even though we only make up 13% of the population, we make up an overwhelming large majority of the actual dialysis clinics. So let's look at let's look at obesity. So as it pertains to obesity, the percent of men over 20 with obesity is 37.5%. So of our black men, we had over the age of 20, 37.5% of these men of us are actually obese. Now, and when we get to the women, we're looking at women over the age of 20, as far as obesity goes, 56.1. Now, I understand that when it comes to this whole BMI scale, what everybody needs to understand is not just with the BMI scale, but many of these metrics that we're using, for all of us is based on the average Caucasian male and female. And so the BMI scale is one of those scales that's also based on the average male and female. And, it's one of those things where you have to be very careful about placing on yourself. However, when we're talking about the BMI for obesity, we're looking at a BMI over 30. So even if it wasn't biased in that way, if you have a BMI over 30, it's very hard for a person to be healthy and have a BMI over 30, unless they're one of those extreme cases and they just have a very high, very high muscle mass to body weight. So if they're talking about the normal for the Caucasian female versus the African American female, it's not the same. You have to use your own scale. Same thing for what they call overweight. It's not going to be the same. Their overweight may be, wait, see, they got me all thrown off. Many times what they're calling overweight in black women is not overweight, because we understand the larger size buttocks. You're not going to really see that prevalent over in the white Caucasian side. And so what they're doing is they're not accounting for that weight. They're not counting from the bone density. They're not counting for a lot of things. And so this is why that scale is not a good scale to go by. So when it goes to actually trying to get a good metric for your health, for both men and women, use your hip to waist ratio. Use your hip to waist ratio. This is where you actually measure your waist from your belly button around your iliac crest. This is your the hip bones on the side. You take a tape measure and you're going to go around from one side all the way back to the other side, and then you're going to also measure your waist. Now that's going to be a better indicator as it pertains to health, because if that abdomen region is big, you have what they call truncal obesity. I don't care what race you are, that's not healthy, because that's where all your organs are at, and that's what they call visceral fat. That's the organ fat, and that's engulfing your organs, and it's slowing down the actual function of your organs. So that's never going to be a healthy thing. All right. So these are just some of the health conditions that we're looking at. When we look at our rates as it pertains to death, we're talking about being number one in heart disease. 76,708 people died. Brothers and sisters died in 2016. 18,189 died in 2016 from stroke. 14,053 died from diabetes in 2016. So Those numbers, of course, they continue to evolve and change over the years. Um, so before I continue, please go ahead, everybody, take a quick second out right now and hit the like button. That way we can get this conversation, this video moved up in the algorithm. We can bring more of our brothers and sisters in this actual conversation, because if they don't get this information from us meaning the community, where you won't understand, where, like, you know, you go to one of these other videos and talk about the BMI, ain't gonna be no love for you. They're gonna tell you if you don't meet the BMI standards, you don't meet the BMI standards. There's not gonna be too much distinction about the Caucasian female versus the African American female as far as the actual body type. So push this video, get this information out, the platform as a whole, because this is us specializing on us. You can't expect it to go the other way around. I can't expect them to specialize on us and then do a good job of it. It hasn't worked out so far. So we need to make sure we continue to control our narratives. So please take a quick second, like the video. Everybody in the chat right now, go ahead and like the video. All right, let's keep going. So check this out. Check this out. And what I'm reading from a blog called Brown Beauty and the Barbell. Her name is Kathleen Richardson. She's a great friend of mine. She's also one of my coaches. She's also a coach with me in a program we do called the Fast Life 28-Day Challenge. This is a challenge we do every single month. It's where we walk a group of people through how to fast and, you know, helping them to radically improve their health. If you want any information about that, you can just go to tfl28.com, tfl28.com, or you can also just click the link in its description. But Kathleen Richardson, I'm reading from her blog, and she does a great job of writing this blog. So if you go to Brown Beauty and a Barbell, this is what she says. We survived Ma'afa, or the Black Holocaust. We survived the Middle Passage, the dehumanization and subjugation of chattel slavery. We survived the extreme injustice of Jim Crow, the terror inflicted on us by the worst terrorist group known to man, the Ku Klux Klan. But we are currently in a seemingly inescapable clutches of the chronic disease in U.S. healthcare system. While many of us were able to escape the life on plantation, we can't seem to escape the vicious cycle of the doctor visits, refills, trips to the pharmacy, and the deteriorating quality of life, which ultimately and sadly leads to premature death. So we survived all of that, but heart disease and type 2 diabetes appears to be the perfect mix for our demise. Now, I'm gonna come and throw my mix in there. You trying to tell me the children, the descendants of the people who were stripped from their land, had their language taken, their traditional religions taken, their culture, their way of life, the way they see things, all of that taken. Now, when you do that to people, they're supposed to die. Like, they're supposed to go extinct, because when you appropriate another culture, or when you what they call the acculturation process, there's supposed to be a ticking time on that people as far as their survival, because it is not natural for another people to survive based on their colonizers or their conquerors culture. There's supposed to be a ticking time bomb on that. Somehow we're a walking miracle. Somehow we're still around here surviving. Then we go through what they call chattel slavery, Jim Crow, KKK. With all of that being done and us surviving all of those things, the prison to the school to prison pipeline, all those things. But when it comes to diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease and stroke, it's not working out too well for us as a community. And what we need to do is we really got to have a serious conversation about why. What's going on? Like, how does that happen? Because those things are hard. Like, how did our ancestors go through all of those things? And then today, fast forward to 2019, you have, let's read the stats again. Essentially, somebody told me, essentially what we have today is we have more Black people dying per day than were dying back during the times of slavery. What? You have more brothers and sisters dying today, 2019, from preventable conditions than they were dying back during the times of slavery. How, Sway? How is that happening? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this whole video right now. So, you know, how is this continuously going on? And we have to actually figure this out now. We have to actually improve it now because it's only going to get worse. Because it's been getting worse and it's only going to get worse. And watch for the hook, watch for the trick bag, because even when you start seeing the death rates going down, you have to now look at what's happening with people who are taking these medications, because they'll be dying as well too, but they'll be dying from other causes. They'll be dying from what they call like iatrogenic deaths. They'll be dying from shock, hypoperfusion. They'll be dying from like other diseases, but it's still coming from the main cause, the main quote unquote disease. So a lot of these death rates don't really reflect the true numbers. But this is something that has to be dealt with today, because if we don't deal with it today, it's only going to get worse. And we're going to leave this to our future generations. And we're going to get to a point where if we don't correct it right now, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren will come into a world where the doctors are looking at them right from birth and saying, go ahead and get the Similac with metformin. You mean the Similac? No, not just the Similac. The Similac with metformin, because these people, they get diabetes like crazy. So let's go ahead and treat him with metformin, because if he ain't diabetic now, it's only a matter of time. Little baby turned 1 years old, he's gonna be diabetic. So we can't leave behind this type of lineage. We can't leave behind this type of heritage where our kids grow up just seeing us so sick and thinking that we're so helpless in this situation, because that's a very dim reality to try to go into, or try to live out. Because now you have somebody who's living their life through the framework of being sick or eventually becoming sick. That's not a life to live, and we can't leave that behind for our children. So like I said, we survived all of that. You can't tell me that we can't survive heart attacks, heart disease, diabetes, dialysis, and amputations. Yeah, we didn't even talk about the amputations. But what I want you to also understand is that, and I want you to make sure you take this quote when we leave here: anything you can't fast from, you are a slave to. Anything that you cannot fast from, you are a slave to. Now, of course, we're going to be talking about food. But when I'm saying fasting, I don't just mean from food. I'm talking about from the media, which you need to be watching this media anyway. I'm talking about toxic people, society, toxic thoughts, music. There's so many things that we would greatly benefit from if we were to abstain from it, because that's what fasting means. Fasting means to abstain from. So if you are having a hard time, or the thought of fasting from something makes you go like, oh, hell no, don't eat for how long? 16 hours? No. You're a slave to it. Point blank period. You're a slave to it. And if you're not a slave to it, prove me wrong. Because right now, when you talk like that, because this is what happens when you when you're trying to empower your family and tell them about fasting, you start talking about no eating. They're like, hold on, wait. You trying to get me to starve? No, not starve. I'm trying to say, like, stay away from food. Starve. Bro, you're 320 pounds. You're not going to starve. Just abstain from food for a little bit. You have enough fuel on you. And what's going on is this mental pain. It's neurological pain, because they are thinking about the discomfort that's going to come from leaving that comfort food. And so it's very painful for them on a neurological level. But that speaks to the fact that if you can't fast from it, you don't control the food. The food controls you. The food tells you when to eat. The food will, you smell something and it's time to eat. You see something on TV and it's time to eat. Look up Pavlov's dog and read about how the scientist was actually able to train a dog. Well, we have the same thing going on now, where the smell makes us want to eat. The TV of a pizza with the golden crust and the cheese just going from it makes us want to eat, even though we don't have true hunger, because there's a difference between true hunger and appetite. But all of these stimulus are cueing us to actually eat. We really got to think about that, because when we get to the actual foods themselves, they're not even healthy. So Once again, anything you can't fast from, you are a slave to. Now, somebody's going to be smart and they're going to be like, what about air? I agree. You're a slave to air. I'm a slave to air. It's the first thing I did when I got here. It's the last thing I'm going to do when I leave here. I'm cool with that, bro. And I don't want to try to fight air. I don't want to try to rebel against air. Not right now, not today. But the food and the medications and all that stuff, I'm all about that smoke. So when we're talking about, let's see, so I'm just reading from my notes. I'm trying to work on my organization, but it is my theory. It is my theory that our community is in a perpetual state of the itis. So real quick in the chat, tell me what the itis is. If you're familiar with the itis, tell me what the itis is. If you have no idea what the itis is, type 6. The itis. Who knows what it is? So let's see. So the itis, let's see. Somebody says swelling. Okay, I get what you're saying, but that's not the itis we're talking about, right? So we have a 6. She says she doesn't know. All right, here we go. Get sluggish and sleepy. Falling asleep after eating. Exactly. Now, so the itis is a popular term in the Black community. If you want to learn more about it, go watch the episode on the Boondocks called the itis. But essentially what the itis is that, when you eat a large meal, people tend to get sleepy, especially when we think about Thanksgiving, Christmas, when we eat all these large meals, we tend to get sleepy, right? Well, when you ask people what's the cause of the itis or what causes the itis, people will say it's the tryptophan, it's the certain protein, the serotonin, and all those things. But that's not true. That's not true, because if you think about it, how many times have you had the itis after eating a stack of pancakes? How many times have you had the itis after eating like a huge bowl of rice with some kind of like sauce on it or something like that? What the itis is your glucose, your blood sugar, skyrocketing very high, followed by insulin having to compensate. When your blood sugar has to go that high because of the simple carbohydrates that you just took in, and insulin has to do the same thing and compensate for it, you need to understand that that is extreme metabolic chaos for your body. So your body is in a physiologically chaotic situation. And to break all of that food down and to actually put things where they need to go and bring down the glucose and bring down the insulin is a very demanding situation. It's extremely demanding on the body. And so when the body sees that happening, your body's like, this mother, all right, go to sleep. And so you get sleepy. And people want to just go lay down, watch football, loosen up their belt, and you're like in a euphoric state. Now, here's the thing about the itis is that if you have somebody who's like, all right, I'm going to clean out the garage, I'm going to go paint the fences outside, then after that, I'm going to start my organization, and then I'm going to go ahead and, do all the bills for the month. They can say all that stuff, but once they eat and they get the itis, all their dreams and goals and ambitions are out the window. They can try to get up and go and paint. They can try to get up and go and do whatever they said they were going to do, but their ambitions and their goals and the will to do it is completely gone, because physiologically you're in a chaos state. Physiologically, you are sympathetically dominant and your insulin levels are very high. And so it's hard to fight that. Even if you want to, it's very hard to fight that slow, sluggish feeling. So it is my theory that because of our overdependence on food, especially the type of foods that we have plaguing our community, it's my opinion that many of us in our community are in a perpetual state of the itis, meaning that we're walking around. And I don't mean itis like you want to go to sleep, but consciously go to sleep. The itis as far as our dreams, our ambitions, our willpower, the things that we have aspired to do, and we seem to kind of dip into that inspiration here and there, and we just fall out of it. And my once again, part of my theory is the reason that we are not able to get up out of this situation is because of the foods that we're constantly taking in. And so this isn't tinfoil talk. This is physiological talk, because when we look at the type of foods that we're constantly eating in, the majority of us, the processed foods, refined carbohydrates, the Chinese foods, and all those things, we're constantly having all these sugar spikes, followed by the insulin spikes as well too. And we're taking the food in multiple times a day. You got people out there recommend that you eat 6 times a day, which is ridiculous. Or people out there telling you to eat every 2 to 3 hours, which is ridiculous. We don't need that much food. So, but however, when we are constantly in that cycle, we need to understand physics or physiology. When you're sympathetically activated, your thoughts are all about the now. Why? Because being sympathetically activated is what they call fight or flight. You got to act, you got to go. And so you got to either fight or you even got to run. And so we're talking about a person who's constantly thinking fight or flight, survive, 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 survive. Even if they don't want to be in that situation, even if they don't want to be in that type of state, physiologically, you can't even help it because you have sugar spikes happening all throughout the day. So when you're in the fight or flight response, you need to be very emotional. Why? Because emotions help you fight very effectively. Emotions help you run away very effectively. When you're in a fight or flight state, you need to be very impulsive, meaning that you take action, you really don't think, because if something touches you, you're like, yo, nothing can really touch you because you got to act. There's no time to sit down and be like, something's touching you on the back. I wonder what this can be. No, you better move, you better duck, you better move, you better run, you better swing. And so those are one of the things. Also, when you are sympathetically activated, your thoughts are in the now because you're thinking about surviving. You're not thinking about how can I invest, how can I start my business, what's Bitcoin. Like, you can't think about any of those things. You're thinking about right now and the now. You're thinking about how can I survive right now? What do I need to do? And so you're short-sighted as far as the actual vision. And that's what we need to understand about the sympathetic system, which that brings me back to the glucose and the insulin, which brings me back to my theory that with us eating so much constantly and the type of foods that we're eating perpetually, a lot of us are in the itis state, like walking around in the itis state. Now, let's think about the opposite of it, which will be the parasympathetic state. The parasympathetic state is what they call feed, breed, rest, and digest. This is the calmer state. So this is where food is actually able to be broken down. This is where you can actually reproduce. This is pretty much thrive. So one system is all about surviving right now. Once you can survive, then you can think about thriving. You can think about thriving once you get the actual emergency out the way. And so the parasympathetic system is about thriving. And so when you're thinking in the parasympathetic state, everything is emphasized as far as long term. Your thoughts are more logical and you're less emotional because you have the patience to be logical. You're not in a state of stress. Also, you're less impulsive. You're more logical. You're thinking bigger picture. And so when you're frequently eating 6 times a day, it's hard to get into that state. When you're having high blood sugar, just high blood sugar, I don't care, maybe you're eating just a couple times a day, but if you're having high blood sugar plus high insulin, you're in this state over here. You're not going to get into that state for the mere fact that your insulin is high. So that's how the whole physiologically being woke works. So one side is the itis, one side is woke. How do you get to being woke? That's where fasting comes into play. So once again, fasting is my gospel. Fasting, I wrote a book back in 2014 when I first started my business, and it was called the Nutrition Manifesto. And inside the Nutrition Manifesto, I made 5 principles that I wanted our community to adopt. And the very last principle, I was actually pretty nervous writing in the book, and it was fasting. I was recommending that the community would fast. And so what I did with that book is I turned it into the world's first Instagram ebook, because it was an ebook, but the videos in the book came from my Instagram page, and so it would always link you back over, right? And fasting was something that I was extremely passionate about, but no matter what I was saying about fasting, everybody was like, how much calories do I need to eat? And I'm like, well, don't worry about the calories, just fast. Let's get you to fasting 16 hours. You can't do 16, let's do 12 hours a day. How much carbs? Let's focus on fasting. Just drink water, try to do a 24, make sure you're staying hydrated. What about my protein? And so what I was seeing was that our community, not just our community, everybody in 2014, everybody was all about these fad diets, all about these weighing of the food, counting calories, the macros, the micros, the paleo, the keto, the vegan, the vegetarian. It was all of these things. And I'm like, this is very interesting. These people are tricky. I'm like, these people are tricky. I was like, nobody's actually even focusing on the one thing that would radically improve their health, regardless of what kind of program, what kind of regimen they're doing, which is fasting. And so, to be honest with you, I became a little quiet in 2014 with fasting because people just weren't feeling it. My community wasn't feeling it, and it seemed not to be a place for it. But after practicing it, with my patients and my clients over the years, I got to the point where I was like, yo, I don't care what they think about it. I'm pushing this. I'm pushing it because I've seen it radically improve too many people's lives to not aggressively push it. And so now I'm going all out about fasting. That's why I sound a little fanatical. I sound a little crazy, but that's because I know that this is the one thing that will radically improve our health. Not your blood pressure medications, not your metformin or your insulin or your simvastatin or any of that stuff. Look, go back and watch my video I did the other day called Better Medications or Better Education. Watch that video. In that video, I go through and I show you just how effective these medications are at, or how effective these medications are. They're not that effective. Most of them are not even effective at all. However, if you take all of the medications in this world and all of their objectives, all of their claims, all of the things that they're supposed to do, and you put them in one pill, it couldn't even stand close to what fasting will allow your body to do. And it's not so much that fasting itself is magical, it's that, bear with me, you are magical. Your physiology is magical. But you can't tap into that quote unquote magic unless you step out the way and let your body do what it does. And that's what fasting does. I told you, when we're talking about the standard American diet, in the processed foods, the standard American diet is the nutritional version of colonization. You're bringing in foods into your body several times a day, every single day of the week, every single day of your life, that have no intentions whatsoever to improve your health. These processed foods, they're only going to deteriorate your health, whether you feel it right now and then, or you feel it later on. But one example would be a lot of the refined carbohydrates. So whether we're talking about Twinkies and bread or rice or anything like that, understand that those foods actually require minerals in order for them to be metabolized. So a lot of the carbohydrates that we're taking in, it requires a lot of magnesium to be broken down. And one of the top nutrient deficiencies, or one of the top mineral deficiencies, is magnesium. When you have low magnesium, you're going to be diabetic. Point blank, period. It's only but so long before you become at least insulin resistant. But diabetes is going to be right there in the future. It's also going to pull on your potassium and your calcium as well too. So you're eating foods thinking that you're getting nutrition, but the foods are not giving you any nutrition, but instead they're taking away nutrition from you. So when we look at colonization of actual territory, we have actual colonizers that are coming to a territory, and they're doing what? Stealing the natural resources. They're stealing the valuable resources. Well, your food does the same thing if you're eating the processed foods. So when you're doing that, your body is constantly in a internal war. Your body's constantly trying to adapt to the foods that you just took in. Your body's constantly trying to keep you alive. Your body's constantly adapting to the environment. When your body's adapting to this environment and you leave it to the Western medicine to actually explain what's going on, they're going to say, oh, you have a disease called high blood pressure. Oh, you have a disease called diabetes type 2. Oh, you have a disease called high cholesterol. But these quote unquote diseases are simply adaptations. They're adapting to the foods that you're bringing in. If your body does not adapt by increasing the blood pressure, then you die right then and there. Why? Because if you have 60,000 miles of blood vessels, which we all do, 60,000 miles means that We all have blood vessels in our bodies that can wrap around planet Earth 2.5 times. Planet Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference around, and our bodies, we have 60,000 miles of blood vessels, which means that it can wrap around planet Earth 2.5 times. So if you have 60,000 miles of blood vessels, and anywhere along that path, there's a constriction, there's a blockage, there's you're not able to actually dilate, it's stiff, and that 120/80 blood pressure is not getting through. Do you expect your body just to stay at 120/80? Stay cool, stay calm. We can't go over 120/80. The doctor said that's bad, so we're going to stay right here at 120/80. Now, I know that 37 trillion cells are not receiving blood right now, but the doctor said don't go over 120/80. You think your body's going to go for that? No, no. Your body understands that you have 37 trillion cells that needs that blood perfusion. And so it's going to increase that pressure and get that blood to those cells by any means necessary. Same thing with cholesterol. If you understand what cholesterol is, then you understand why it is increasing. First of all, cholesterol, there's no such thing as good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. That's all sales and marketing. That is all sales and marketing. There's only one type of cholesterol, and that's cholesterol. When we talk about diabetes, if your cells don't become insulin resistant in the face of high insulin levels, once again, you're going to die extremely fast. There won't be any follow-ups. There won't be any emergency rooms. There won't be any prescription refills. There won't be any of that. If your body doesn't have the ability to adapt, which that's what those things are, then you die right then and there. So by bringing that in, you're going to have to face those issues, right? But your body is already intelligent. Your body already has an innate intelligence in it, but you can't tap into it unless we get out the way. And the way you get out the way is by fasting. So what I want everybody to make sure they do is take this word with them. It's called autophagy. Autophagy, or you can say autophagy. So AUTOPHAGY. You can Google that, look it up. But when we look at the word autophagy, essentially this means self-eating. So self-eating. This is a process that the cells go through. So you have, well, cells are supposed to go through on a regular basis, but most of us don't actually go through this process. So when we're looking at the term autophagy, it's something that's extremely beneficial. This is the magical part I'm talking about. One of the magical things I'm talking about that we would greatly benefit from in our community. But when those 37 trillion cells are working around the clock, constantly breaking down the nutrients and excreting out enzymes and hormones, they get to the point where some of the machinery, if we have to use that term, the machinery in the cells becomes old, it becomes worn out, it becomes deteriorated. And during the phases of autophagy, what your body is going to do is it's going to use its internal resources, and it's going to take these parts inside of that one cell and actually break it down, recycle it, and build a new part with it. That way your cell doesn't have to continue to work with parts that are less optimal or suboptimal. And so instead of doing that, your body makes sure that these cells continue to have new parts. But when you don't fast, you don't get to go through that process. And what you have to do is just wait till these cells die off. And your cells are going to last roughly, well, you have like millions of cells that are made every single minute, and you have billions of cells that are made every single day. So when your body is not allowed to go through a autophagy phase, you're going to have to just deal with the cells that you have, whether they're optimal or not, and you have to pretty much wait till they die off. So autophagy is something extremely important. I want to make sure that everybody knows that term. Go ahead and look it up. So I'm gonna get to these questions in the or the comments in the chat. But so as far as fasting, so once again, myself and two other coaches, we do a fasting program every single month. It's called the Fast Life 28-Day Challenge. You can find that at tfl28.com. And we're starting up our next challenge on this Monday. We're starting up our next challenge. So tfl28.com, or you can just click the link in the description. Now, as far as fasting and what type of regimen I recommend, first understand that fasting is exactly what the Black community needs. When we look at all these conditions that we're dealing with, we need to understand that a large majority is coming from the actual foods that we're eating. We're eating way too frequently. The foods we're eating are very low in quality, And on top of that, we have medications that we're taking for these conditions that are actually making other situations worse, which is going to lead to us taking other medications as well too. So we have several things going on, and fasting pretty much takes you out of that framework where you don't have to actually deal with any of those things other than medications. You got to work with your doctor, right? But when we're talking about fasting versus these conditions, most of the conditions that I listed out: high blood pressure, cholesterol, prediabetes, diabetes, gynecomastia, PCOS, obesity, so on and so forth, they are built off of the foundation of insulin resistance. This means that these are just the many different faces of insulin resistance. Okay, so high blood pressure, most people don't think about insulin resistance. They just think it runs in my family, I got to deal with the high blood pressure. But when you are insulin resistant, you have higher levels of insulin. Higher levels of insulin is going to increase the viscosity of your blood, meaning the actual thickness of your blood, which means that your heart has to actually pump harder. But high insulin also will cause inflammation to the actual endothelium. The endothelium is the inner lining of the arteries. And so when you're insulin resistant and you have high glucose, your blood pressure has to go up. So that's how some people manifest insulin resistance. Some people manifest insulin resistance with high cholesterol or high triglycerides. Some people manifest it by just gaining weight. So the actual fat is an organ. Fat is an organ. And so fat is also an adaptive organ. It's a protective organ, because if you have the ability, the better, the more you are able to gain fat, the longer it will take for you to actually see these things on the actual blood work. What I mean by that is you'll have doctors telling people that you're healthy fat. Now, I don't use those terms, but they'll tell them that they're healthy fat. This means that yes, you may be obese or you may be overweight, but your blood work looks clean. You're not diabetic. Your blood pressure looks fine, and that's because their body is well adapted, and their body was able to adapt by exporting a lot of those toxins to the actual fat cells, also by escorting a lot of the glucose to the the fat cells as well too. So where someone else who is naturally skinnier or have parents who are on skinnier side, they'll become sicker than the other people because they don't have the genetic ability to gain that much weight. And so they'll become sicker because that fat will go into their organs quicker than the other person's fat. And so when it starts going into the organs, you're always going to have a problem. Fat does not belong in organs. Fat is an organ. It does not belong in other organs. So, so fasting will radically and drastically decrease all of those things for us, because we have to understand that fasting is not anything new. Fasting is extremely old. It's one of our traditional African principles. We've always practiced fasting. It wasn't up until we were stripped from our land and got here where we started doing these foreign and strange things, eating these horrible foods. And now it's the 6 small meals and the constant eating. But fasting is African 101. 6 small meals is colonizer 101. 2 to 3 hours is colonizer 101. Like, that's not us. That's not our traditions. Now, if you're building muscles, like, this is not a talk for you. So fasting is going to radically improve the conditions of the community, mainly because it's going to get us out of our own way. Also because of the healing processes that are going to take place during the hours of fasting, so mainly the autophagy, also the actual decrease in the insulin, the decrease in the actual glucose as well too. And so you're going to have people who are diabetic improving due to the actual fasting, people who have hypertension decreasing, and cholesterol and so forth, and all these things. So it gets to a point, and I have a lot of experience in doing this, it gets to a point where people have to stop taking their medications. People have to actually go to their doctor and be like, hey, I know I'm on this metformin, I know I'm on this glucose, I mean this insulin, I know I'm on these medications, but I take it now and I just feel lightheaded. I take it now and I feel like I'm going to faint. And then they do your blood work and they're like, oh, that's because your A1C is no longer 11. Your A1C is down to 6. Your blood sugar is no longer 320. Your blood sugar is now 100. Like, so you have these radical improvements, and the medications and the healthy eating gets to the point where it's just too much. And so one has to go. And a provider or practitioner who has morals is going to make the medications go down, right? They won't tell you to stop doing what you're doing because that's obviously working. If they have morals and ethics, they're going to tell you keep doing what you're doing on that side, but let's bring down these medications. So fasting has the power to do that. Fasting has the power to actually decrease our numbers inside of these treacherous dialysis clinics that are ramping up in our communities, because they say diabetes is the #1 cause of dialysis. They say high blood pressure is the #2 cause of dialysis. Once again, I just told you that both of those things are mainly insulin resistance. And I just told you again, insulin resistance is the punching bag of fasting. When we're looking at the process of fasting has the ability to do all those things, including obesity, fat loss. So when we talk about gluconeogenesis, gluconeogenesis is the creation of glucose. And when we're in the state of fasting, we're talking about the creation of glucose from fats. And so your body gets to the point where it's no longer actually utilizing the glucose in your bloodstream, because you've become so low, because you've been fasting for that long. Your body will then go to the actual glycogen that's stored in your liver, but once that's gone, it will now move on to the actual fat, and it'll start burning the actual fat as a source of fuel. And this is the state you want to be in, and you do that by fasting. And so as far as improving diabetes, prediabetes, erectile dysfunction, PCOS, gynecomastia, high blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, all those things will be radically improved by fasting. So how do I recommend fasting? I recommend, first of all, you got to talk to your doctor. Let your doctor know that you plan on making lifestyle improvements. You're going to change your foods. You don't just stop your medication. I gotta make sure I cover myself because I have a medical license. I know other people can just say whatever. So that's the first thing. Make sure you give them a heads up that you're making lifestyle improvements and that you would like to be monitored in the future as pertains to possibly decreasing your medications because of these healthy habits that you're taking. Next, you're going to get in where you fit in, meaning that one of your main goals as pertains to your last meal is trying to make your last meal like 6 p.m. Now, I know for a lot of people that may not be realistic because of work and everything else like that, but don't go past 8 p.m. while eating. And the reason for this is because between the hours of 11 and 2, some people say 11 and 3 is when you're going to have your highest levels of growth hormone, and plus you're going to have your highest levels of actual repairing the cellular mechanisms. But in order for this to truly take place, you have to have a high level of ghrelin. And in order for your body to have a high level of ghrelin, your stomach needs to be empty. And it takes about 4 hours for your stomach to be empty. So when we back that back up, we're looking at 6 o'clock. So if you stop your eating at 6 o'clock, you got 4 hours before 10 o'clock gets there. And between the hours of 10 and 2, some people say 3, that's when you're going to have your highest repairing, your highest building, your highest detoxification. That's when you're going to be in the actual, they call it the magic period. That's what they actually call it. So I recommend trying to make your last meal at 6, 8 o'clock at the latest. Next, when you wake up, it's only water. You'll be surprised about how hard it is to explain that. And I understand because we're so used to eating. I don't care how healthy the food is. It can be carrots, it can be broccoli. No, that's eating. You're only drinking water. That's it. Can you drink green tea or black tea? Yes, but don't put anything in it. Can you drink black coffee? Yes, but don't put anything in it. Don't put any creamer, don't put any butter, don't put any sugar, none of that. Water. And so I choose to say water only because when you start saying green tea and coffee and everything like that, people start getting a little fancy and start pouring a little something in there, and then your fast is broken. So let's just stick with water, right? Can you drink other things? Yeah, but just stick with water. Okay, so water is going to be the only thing you're actually taking during the times of fasting, right? Make sure you stay hydrated. Make sure you stay hydrated, especially if this is your first time fasting. Why? Because if you're fasting for 16 plus hours, you're going to, and it also depends on your health status and how much glucose you have in your bloodstream and how much glycogen you have stored in your muscle cells and your liver cells. But once your body starts pulling on the glycogen is the stored form of glucose. But when your body starts pulling on that glycogen, for every molecule of glycogen your body releases, you're also losing 4 grams of water with that as well too. So the fasting process tends to bring out water with it as well too. People go to the restroom and you're losing a lot of water. So you have to make sure you're staying very much hydrated, because fasting for a new person can make them feel dehydrated. So water hydration is very important. Also, if you feel like you're getting any headaches or anything like that, make sure that you're using pink salt, sea salt. Oh yeah, salt is not the devil that you've been told for it to be. Salt does not increase your blood pressure. All those things. It's a pretty good book. Yeah, can y'all see that? It's called The Salt Fix. But also, better yet, if you want to just watch a video, go to H-BAMN.com, H-BAMN.com, and I have a blog called The Truth About Salt and High Blood Pressure. The Truth About Salt and High Blood Pressure. Go check that out. All right, so surprise, you actually need salt, and decreasing salt increases your blood pressure, and now they are moving the goalpost and recommending that you get in more sodium throughout your day. The sodium, or the salt that is a problem, is the one coming from processed foods. And it's not even the sodium. The sodium is actually the most friendliest ingredient in the actual food. It is the other ingredients, such as the yellow 5, the blue 6, or whatever else is in there. A lot of those additives and preservatives, and especially the refined carbohydrates, like I told you, actually increases your blood pressure. Because when we look at the ratio of where we're getting our salt from, only you're talking about 77% of the actual sodium coming from processed foods. The other 6% and 5% is coming from people putting food on their salt on their food while they're at the table, or adding it while they're cooking. So very small amount is actually coming from the salt we're putting in our food. The majority of the sodium of the American diet is coming from the processed foods. And so salt, or sodium, has been used as a scapegoat. It's been used as a scapegoat because now we're focusing on buying low sodium this, low salt this, and everybody knows, you got to eat low salt. Yo, we come from the salt, right? We come from salt water. You got to be careful with that. So anyways, now you're seeing all these things pop up with heart failure and low salt. That's a problem. High blood pressure and low salt. It's a very weird world out here in this medical field, because when you walk around, you know a little bit too much and everybody's pushing one thing. It causes a lot of conflict. But either way, go to my blog, hbam.com. Check out The Truth About Salt and High Blood Pressure. Read about it. I made a video and I actually typed it the blog. So check that out. Where was I going? Oh yeah, so you're only drinking water. Make sure you stay hydrated. Also, don't be afraid to add a little bit of pink salt or sea salt to your water. Stay busy. Stay busy, right? Fasting is the best time to actually try to read books, do something productive, because your mind is operating on a very different level. I already told you about the sympathetic, parasympathetic. And so what I recommend is really listening to yourself, take notes about how you feel. See when you start to get hungry. Also realize that hunger is something that comes and goes. That's being done by a hormone called ghrelin. You hear the word ghrelin, sounds like growl. So that's being done by the hormone called ghrelin, but hunger is not something that comes and just stays around. It doesn't do that. Hunger comes and it goes in waves. And your body will start to adapt to your eating cycle, because we all have our own cycles. It's called the circadian rhythm. And when you start reprogramming yourself, or when you start fasting, your body's going to go back to its default mode, which is going to be easily a 12 to 16 hour fast. Like, naturally, most people don't even feel hungry in the morning. Like, the only reason a lot of people eat in the morning is because they were told that they have to eat in the morning. They were told that breakfast is the most important part of the meal of the day. They were actually told that if you don't eat, you get fat. All these things with no receipts whatsoever. And if you don't believe me, check out this book. This is called Salt, Sugar, and Fat. How the Food Giants Hooked Us. And this guy, he's a researcher, a journalist, and he just goes through and talks about all the work that goes into making sure food is addictive, and just how much work really goes into that whole entire game. So so what you want to do is make your goal to try to you work your way up to a 16-hour fast with nothing but water. Some people may only be able to do 10 hours before they start feeling very uncomfortable. Well, then that's going to be your 10 hours. You stop right there. You go ahead and break your fast. When you break your fast, the way you break your fast is extremely important. You don't go and break your fast with Golden Corral. You don't go and break your fast with very unhealthy foods. The best way to break your fast is with a green smoothie. And so in this challenge that we do, and we're starting up with people in different protocols, and we have habits that they're going to be doing every single day, and we have them actually checking in with those habits every single day. Now, based on what you have going on, you're going to need to make sure when you break your fast, do your best to break it with leafy greens. So a green smoothie, of course, is going to be the best way that you break your fast. Like I said, don't go and just mess it up by eating McDonald's or anything like that. And so that's why you have to be prepared, and that's why we actually show the members in our group how to be prepared for the real world when it comes to eating. All right, so it's 12 o'clock. What else? So make sure you break your fast properly, which is going to be a green smoothie. Make sure you're only drinking water, and work your way up to doing a 16-hour fast. Once you get comfortable with doing a 16-hour fast and you feel like you can do that 5 days a week, this is when you start to dip into the 24. And understand that doing a 24 and a 48-hour fast is like throwing a grenade into a war zone. I mean, like, that's really when you start seeing results, and that's when I really get people to start seeing results, is when I start getting them to do a lot of the 24s and the 48s and the 72s. Now, I know that sounds crazy right now, but your body actually gets used to this. Like, your body actually wants this, and it wants to actually continue it. So that's that. All right. So, I appreciate y'all being on here tonight with me this long. Before y'all leave, make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you're still in here. Let me read some of this quotes. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't mean to not read it. All right. So, is that a liquid fast? So the fasting that I recommend is a water fast. Using the same information that I just gave, but water fast. Malaya, thank you. That was so good. I'm glad. Penny says thank you. Love. Appreciate you. I appreciate y'all rocking with me. It's 12:05, man. And I have to kind of slow myself down because fasting is my gospel. I will talk about this all day. Hunger is hunger. All right. You need to focus more on my business. This is perfect timing. Yeah, I need to focus. Yeah, so like I said, if you have a project going on, fasting is what I use to pass my medical boards. Like, I had 2 kids while I was going through school, right? And that's like a no-no. Like, everybody knows, like, when you're going through school and you're learning all the things about medicine and doing rotations, don't go out there and have kids. I mean, I'm with my family, right? And two. So needless to say, I'm very much involved, taking care of the kids, being with the family, going out, all those things like that. And my studying time was, very low. And I had those moments when I need to actually cram. I'm going to go on a 3-day fast, and I'm only going to see the books. And, this is where it gets a little airy-fairy, but it was like, I felt like I was cheating. I felt like I was putting the whole entire book in my head. And while I'm taking the examination, I'm able to see the book in my head. I'm able to remember, like, what paragraph I saw cardiomyopathy. I'm able to see, like, what the picture of the actual circulatory system looks like. And it's just like, man, this is easy. So fasting is great for mental clarity. All right. Notice if I stay busy, I don't think about eating. Yeah, that's true. So that brings up the question, are you truly hungry? Or is this an appetite that was brought on based on emotions? Because emotions will cause you to have an appetite, but appetite is not a hunger. Appetite is not the same thing as being hungry. All right. So I'm going to come back through here and look at these comments. I really appreciate y'all for being here, but my time is up, and I'm going to be back on here Saturday at noon, I believe. And on Saturdays, we do Survival Saturdays. So I'll be back on here talking about something, dealing with being prepared, just in the real world. I might talk about a bug-out bag. Last week, we talked about fire drills and making sure your family's prepared. So I'll be back on here Saturday again, 12 p.m. And we're going to get at it, all right? So I appreciate y'all for being out here with me. Make sure y'all go check out tfl28.com if you want to learn more about fasting. The link is in the description.